Hello and welcome to WLRN's studios in lovely Madison, Wisconsin. I'm Thistle Pettersen, and today I am hosting a conversation with Amy Sousa, KatyJean from Feminist News, and Jesika Gonzalez from the TERF Collective. I will just put them on screen so we can say hello. There they all are. Here in the USA, Amy is on the West Coast. KatyJean is in the Midwest with me in Michigan, and well, I'm in Wisconsin, but she and I are in the Midwest. And Jesika is on the East Coast. So I'd just like to welcome all of my guests today. We will be discussing leadership in the feminist movement, and we're going to be doing it as a live stream, which is a new way of broadcasting for WLRN. So thank you so much to those of you who are online tuning in right now. We also, WLRN has been expanding out to live streaming on the streets. And we have recently been in Madison, Wisconsin in April, doing a Speaker's Corner Free Speech for Women event. And then we also did one in Chicago, and most recently in South Carolina and in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm gonna mute, I think, my guests here so that we don't get that background sound. So anyway, you can catch all of our live streams on WLRN's YouTube channel, Facebook, and Twitter. And today we are having a conversation about leadership and what it means basically to be organizing in a pretty hostile climate here in the USA and to be boots on the ground grassroots organizers. And this is a conversation that is for and by women only, but it's also a public conversation, much like our live streamed Speaker's Corner Free Speech for Women events. But this discussion today is going to be focused. And I gave a set of questions to our speakers ahead of time for them to mull them over. And April Null, WLRN collective member, is moderating the comments from afar. She's coming to us from Canada today. So thank you, April, for moderating the comments. We have to be the media. The mainstream media is not covering women's news, at least not from a radical feminist perspective. The mainstream media is not covering our events, is not allowing us to express our opinions. And so here we are, WLRN, branching out, beginning to live stream. And I just want to welcome you all here. And thank you so much for tuning into our volunteer-powered community radio station and live streaming station online. And I'm going to put up our Women's Liberation Radio News address, URL, so that you, the listener and the viewer today, can go onto our website and click the donate button and hopefully decide to make a monthly donation, because if 5 women today donate $5 a month to WLRN, we will be able to live stream indefinitely. It's about $50 a month. And like I said, we are all volunteers to have this live stream service. So I encourage you to go to that website that you see on the bottom of the screen and click the donate button to support live community-based feminist radio and live streaming. So with that, I am going to begin by talking a little bit about Dr. Martin Luther King, a great American leader in our society who also found himself in a very historic moment and able to harness his power to speak to many, many, many Americans. And I was able to watch the Drum Major Instinct, which I'm going to put that URL up on the screen as well, because it really, I think, informs our uniquely American discussion of leadership. Because he was also living during a very volatile time and had a lot of detractors and critics who not only were critical of his approach, but they were antagonistic and hostile. And many of you know that we feminists here organizing in the United States have many detractors who are hostile as well. And there's also, when you're talking about organizing, there's this question of leadership and who is on the mic, who is doing what task to make our movement happen, to build the community that we need in order to have our voices heard and bring about social justice for women and girls. So in Dr. King's speech, his final speech in 1968 before he was assassinated, in that speech, The Drum Major Instinct, he talks about leadership as a form of service to our communities. And I think in feminism, our community is our sisterhood, that feeling of camaraderie, of togetherness. And if leadership is service to our community, that means that anyone can be a leader. And that's another thing I really liked about Dr. King's speech, the Drum Major Instinct. He says that if we are in service to our community, then every single person in the community has a role to play. And I love that approach to leadership, rather than our leaders being people with fancy degrees and books and things that distinguish them and give them a high status in our society. Women's liberation is for all women. And WLRN and our live streamed events, our Speakers Corner events, Free Speech for Women events, are for any woman to find her voice and be a leader, tell her story, and motivate and serve her community. So in that way, I feel that the type of leadership that I see in our feminist community mirrors and reflects the type of leadership that Dr. King is talking about in the Drum Major Instinct. So I encourage all of our followers and listeners to tune in and listen to that amazing American speech about leadership and how the Drum Major Instinct is within each of us. And it can be harnessed for the good, or it can go awry. And we do see some of that happening in our feminist movement as well. So with no further ado, though, I chose these three women to speak with us today about feminist leadership because they are leaders in our feminist community. And I look forward to hearing what they have to say about leadership. And I'm going to introduce first Amy Sousa, who will answer the first question. Let me go to the introduction here. Amy Sousa holds an MFA in theater from NYU, Tisch School of the Arts, and an MA in depth psychology from Pacifica Graduate Institute. She has 20 years of theater education experience with 15 years in the New York City public schools, teaching peer mediation, conflict resolution, anger management, self-esteem building, and literacy using theater engagement. She is currently a women's rights activist, educator, and facilitator whose work focuses on embodiment, boundaries, intuition, instincts, and sense perceptions as internal authority building practices. So welcome, Amy. She is also known as the Known Heretic. And it is so fantastic to have you on the show today. And I'm going to hand it over to you and ask you, what does the word leadership conjure for you? And what is your definition of feminist leadership?
Hey, thank you, Thistle, and thank you for having me. And it's great to be here with everyone today. Yeah, so I've been thinking a lot about this, and I'm glad that we're having this discussion because ultimately, leadership, I think, is something that we're all thinking about right now. And I really see leadership as, you know, being a leader is being the one who inspires and the one who encourages, and ultimately the one who leads by example. And I think that what we see in MLK and why he was so inspirational is because he really modeled and lived his values. And he was someone who lifted others up and encouraged them to speak. And, I'm not sure. I think to speak of feminist leadership, um, to say that my values are woman-centered, I think is very true. But to say what is the particular kind of leadership that we need right here in this movement, and I think the kind of leadership that we need is the leadership that inspires. We are facing an industry. We are not just facing an ideology, although we are facing an ideology, but we are also facing an industry. And that industry and ideology combined is global. So we are facing a mass global ideology with $5.2 trillion behind it, according to Out Leadership. So we are facing something massive. This is a massive juggernaut of a system at work against us rather. And what we have going for us is we have grassroots, we have each other. And ultimately, I do think we have the majority. But I think the strategy that we really need to employ is one of encouraging one another. And I remember back to when I was still speaking about this anonymously, and I was very much inspired by the women that I saw out there. I was inspired by KatyJean, even while she was still actually Posey Parker. So, she had to make that shift as well, from using a pseudonym to using her real name. And I think that many of us go through that step from being anonymous to being public. And I think it starts with those little conversations that we have with one another, and then it starts with the conversations that we're having in our direct community, and then it kind of amplifies out. We have these reverberations, where we inspire, and then we encourage other people to also inspire those around them. And that's really what I see. I try to live my values. And for me, as you sort of said in my bio, I very much see the movement that we are currently facing as one of being about disembodiment. What are these gender identities? They're a conceptualization, they're an abstraction, they're a think. There's something we think about ourselves. They're external to us. So this is a movement of dissociation and disembodiment and dismemberment. I mean, they're literally cutting off body parts off of kids. It creates cognitive dissonance. It's objectifying. It's hypersexualizing. So all of these things are dissociative qualities. So what we also need right now, is to remember our embodiment, remember our humanity, our physicality, our intuitions and our instincts and our sense perceptions, and how important these things are. And I think that we can do a lot of this by simply living them, modeling them in our own lives, showing the people around us in our communities and online that, this is possible. And, if we can take a small account with like 30 followers and encourage that woman to come to a women's free speech event, and suddenly she has 300 and then 3,000 followers. That's how we grow this. We spread awareness by spreading the message to each other, and then encouraging each other to continue spreading that message.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Amy. Yeah, courage calls to courage. We just had that event here in Madison, and absolutely, leaders inspire. Next, we're going to go to KatyJean and ask KatyJean the same question. What is leadership? What does that term conjure in you? And what is your definition of feminist leadership? Oh, but first, let me introduce you. KatyJean has been politically active for 25 years, especially defending abortion without excuse or apology. She discovered radical feminism after being called a bigot for the first time ever while talking on LinkedIn about the J.K. Rowling essay. Since then, she has been a loudmouth with a J.K. Rowling summoned me sign in numerous actions east of the Mississippi and all over the internet. She is founder of FemaXX, co-choreographer of XX Salute, an amateur stand-up comedian, and, fun note, her voice has been picked up on WLRN at least 2 times prior to today. She is working this summer hosting FemaXX News Thursday nights of, by, and for women and girls, and organizing free speech for women events at a city near you. So welcome, KatyJean, and we look forward to hearing your answers to the question.
Hi, Thistle. Thank you so much for having me on. Hi, Amy. Hi, Jessica. What a blockbuster panel here. So thank you for including me in it. Leadership. I think the most important thing about leadership, and just piggybacking on what Amy said about inspiring, is, are you doing something that other people want to follow and do what you're doing? And if so, then you're a leader, right? So some of us still need to figure out exactly that right formula of how to do something that other women can identify with and associate to, and join up with you, and that's fine. But as long as you're doing something that other people, other women want to follow in line with what you're doing, then that makes you a leader. I want to say there's lots of opportunity for leadership in what we're doing. I see our movement as being really kind of like on the early edge. I mean, feminism has been around obviously for forever, and as you said in the intro, I've been working on it for 25 years. But this seems like something a little bit new. Defining women as a basis of being adult human female, and that we are a sex-based class, that we are oppressed on the basis of our sex. Men and women are different, that women have superior bodies because we can make human beings. I always say men's consolation prize is that they're bigger and stronger than us. That's what the gods or creators or whatever you believe in gave men, instead of the superior ability to create new human beings. But because they are stronger and bigger than us, then that of course makes us vulnerable to their violent urges, and their domination, and the position that puts us in as women, to still have our own identity, to feel safe around men, and to be able to live out our lives as fully embodied human beings that women are. So we are not. I see this male as default and women as other, and that's kind of one of my missions in life, is to say, no, male and female are there is no default. You could be male or you could be female. There's not one that is the primary person and then the other that is a contrast to that. We are, if you will, yin and yang of humanity. But back to leadership, just wanting to ask women, if you want to be a leader, to really think about how you're inviting women to come in and join what you're doing, how you can elevate the skills that she has and tap that into to what you need, and really, just having a brand and an identity and a culture and a value system. And the value system is really important because as your idea gets challenged, whether it's from outside or from within, or from women who you think you would be allied with, and yet you come at odds, it's your value system that is going to lead you through and get you to the right side of that. So it's important to think in advance about what your values are going to be for your thing. But there's so many niches and opportunities. I mean, like, we have a need for representing women legislatively. We have a need for leadership just on the ground with protests, but also for supporting women as they're going through their multiple things, whether that's, obviously we need to maybe rethink how we're supporting women from an abuse shelter perspective, because our abuse shelters are, and safe havens are being overrun by men. So we need to reconsider how we're going to deliver that. So we need women in all aspects of this, whether you're working with kids or older women or pregnant women or lesbians or athletes. There's so many different inroads. So like find your niche, find the thing that really like turns your crank that you can work really hard on, and because you'll need that to get you through it. And then find other women that want to join you. But the last thing that I want to say, Thistle, before you kick it over to Jesika, is that not only do we need leaders, but we also need women to kind of fill in the ranks underneath and behind those leaders, doing all of the work that needs to be done to make any project go. So you don't have to be a leader to participate in what we're doing. You just have to be somebody who's willing to do the work, who's willing to show up, who's willing to get along, who's willing to have difficult conversations and stand up against adversity and be a friend to other women in our movement. Thank you.
Thank you so much, KatyJean. I really appreciate that, that every woman can be a part of this movement. And what you said about leaders noticing women's skills and figuring out, well, where can she plug in? If she's good at writing, can she write the press release? If she's good at public relations, could she maybe be the police liaison? Because we need those types of roles to be fulfilled when we're doing our street demonstrations, for example. So awesome. Thank you so much. And
Sure.
Next, we're going to turn to Jesika Gonzalez, and she's going to answer the same question. Jesika is an ordinary working class woman and the founder of the TERF Collective, an organization pursuing guerrilla approaches to fighting trans ideology. TERF Collective hosts semi-weekly chat sessions with gender-critical women and radical feminists from all over the world called TERF Nights. There, she joins together decades-long activists and those newly peaked in wide-ranging conversations. They discuss the impact of gender ideology, protest actions, and participants are invited to imagine a future free of the impositions and requirements of the patriarchy. So thank you for being here today, Jesika. I am going to put you on full screen and unmute you, and you can answer the question.
Hi there. Thank you so much, Thistle, for inviting me to this panel. It's really lovely to be with you and Amy, and of course, KatyJean. So, I will just echo some of the things that I've already heard. I do consider leadership to be service. That's how I viewed it for me. It's a service. It's like the thing that I give back to this community so that then we may, build this struggle and try to see some success in the future. I'll also echo what I heard you say earlier on in the conversation when you kicked off the panel, that because it is service, anybody can be a leader. And I wholeheartedly believe that. So KatyJean just mentioned that we don't just need women to step up and be, hearkening back to MLK Jr.'s comment of, bring the drum major. Not every woman is going to be the drum major. We do need women to fill in the ranks. And primarily, we need women to fill in the ranks because those are going to be the women that rise up to be the drum major in fairly short order, because one of the challenges we face here in this gender critical, radical feminist space is being feminist activists isn't all we do. We all have families and jobs and lives that we fill. And something I've noticed is that a lot of us can go really hard at our feminist activism for short periods of time, and then we need to be able to have replacements behind us, and we kind of do our service in waves. So that's something I really want to get women in our movement thinking about, is come to the front, learn what's going on, work your way into what's going on and prepare yourself to take on those leadership roles, because at some point you'll be needed, because some women will have to step back and take care of the other aspects of their lives. That's just inherent to what we do, because being feminist activists is not a full-time job to almost any of us. And then in terms of what is feminist leadership specifically, it's what we're doing here. It's we're centering women's needs and priorities, and we're not being diverted into prioritizing anything else. So really, that's all I really wanted to talk about for my first answer here is anybody can be a leader. So everybody, please join in. And when it's your time to shine, you'll kind of see it and know it. Inspiration will strike, and you'll get it, get a hold of a good project that you really want to be a part of, or you really want to take charge of, and you'll drive that, and I think you'll know.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jesika. Yeah, burnout is a problem because we are mostly all volunteers, those of us who are leading in our grassroots, boots on the ground feminist movement. And I love what you said about, some of us are we're doing this in service because it has to be done, not because we want to be in the spotlight necessarily. I was really nervous to come on to this live stream today. Public speaking is not my forte, but I feel like it's necessary. We need to come out with our real names and our faces and represent, because we're being silenced. We're being bullied and harassed just for wanting to state our opinions about women's rights. And that can be extremely tiring and can cause a lot of burnout. And so we need tons of women to join our ranks and come show and exercise their leadership in our movement. And with that, I'm going to move on to our next question, and we'll have Amy answer this question. What are the repeated obstacles women face in our collective activism that you've noted, and how can we dodge them or work through them to make progress toward our common values and goals? Amy Sousa. Hang on, let me get her up here. All right. Go ahead, Amy.
Muted my mic. Okay. You unmuted me. Okay. I think there are, there's obstacles that are, private obstacles, and there's obstacles that are sort of organizational obstacles. I think, private obstacles are the obstacles that are sort of faux puts in front of us. So those private obstacles are like, going from being anonymous to going public. And there are a lot of very real obstacles to doing that. And I think they can be navigated in different ways. I think, it is hard if you are in a situation where you fear for your job. But I do encourage and hope to inspire women to move through that, because I do think, it will take some of us to do kind of the thing that Maya Forstetter has done, which is to come up against a job and fight it. So it will take some women to challenge jobs and to push back at organizations that would threaten women over their jobs for speaking observable reality. What we're talking about here is speaking observable reality, but I want to, I do think it's fair to be honest with those women who have fear around being public, that it's real, and there is some reality in that. But I think it can be overcome by building better networks. So I think the more the more networks we have to support us, the easier it will be for women to get more vocal and to become public, which will enable them to also be better leaders. So I do encourage women to expand their networks, to be in chat groups about this on Facebook, to be in private DM groups on Twitter, to get involved with organizations like Jesika's, to be involved in like chats like Women Are Here Today, because even connections are being built by being part of these live stream chats. So to build a community, that is really fortifying. I mean, it's surprisingly fortifying. When I came public, I wrote this essay about J.K. Rowling, and I wrote about how I thought J.K. Rowling was the new Me Too, and I posted this on Facebook, and that's when I went public to my community. I had already been public with amongst women that I trusted, but that was really going public. But what helped me to be able to do that is that I had already built a foundation of community in private Facebook groups and on my Twitter. So those people could come in and support me in these sort of arguments that I was having with my community. And it wasn't as scary and it wasn't as hard because I had already built up this community of women. So I think that's at the level of like where we want to go from being anonymous to being more forward. I do think there are more organizational challenges in the sense of like different countries will face different challenges. And for women in the United States, I think a huge hurdle that we face is being so spread out. So it's really important for us to try and build in-person networks in sort of rough geographical locations that we live in. So I'm sort of on the West Coast. It's important for West Coast women to try to meet up and get together. It's important for the women in the Midwest to do this, or the women in the East Coast, or the women in the South. I've heard a critique that, we do have a lot to learn from the UK feminists. I'll preface this with that. But, I've heard people say, what are the American women doing? What are they doing? Because we see these amazing Speakers Corners events and we see our UK sisters at gatherings all together. Well, their country is frankly just much smaller. And they have a lot more ability, to drive for 2 or 3 hours and be able to meet up. And our country is so vast, it could take 5 days to drive across the country. Mm-hmm. So I think there are some sort of structural and organizational problems at that level. And I would sort of also argue on our behalf that we are starting to meet it. We are starting to gather in person more. We are starting to have more women's free speech events. And what it takes is for us to really be able to have multiple women in multiple locations doing this. And I think we've started to see it. We had the double feature event that we hosted on WLRN last week, and KatyJean was there. And we had a whole group, a new group of women who I think were new to some of us who have been in this conversation, from South Carolina popping up to do this. And I think we can do that more, and I would offer that, organizations like WLRN, myself, others, we can host these live streams, and this spreads our message. We don't have media, we don't have MSNBC, we don't have CNN, we don't have the New York Times covering what we're doing. So we have to make our own media. But by making our own media, we reclaim a lot of that power, and we also can use it to inspire and kind of bring others into that leadership.
Absolutely. And eventually we will be so loud that they won't be able to ignore us anymore. I think that's where this movement is going. And then we're going to have our numbers as well. We're going to have more and more women joining our ranks. So thank you, Amy. And now we'll go to KatyJean, and she can answer the question about the obstacles that you have noted to organizing in the U.S.
Right. So yes, I think that we see numerous obstacles, but I just want to give women every encouragement in the world that none of these obstacles have stopped me, and they've hardly slowed me down. The first thing that I'll say is to all those obnoxious men who want to show up and intimidate us and threaten us and talk over us and silence us. I'm not afraid of you. I am not afraid of you. I know that I am right in what I am saying and that I have a right to say it. I am an American citizen with inalienable rights, including the right to free speech, and it is my right to say what I have to say. And all I'm saying is the truth. So if you are afraid to let me say the truth, then that reflects more on you than it does on me. But I agree with Amy and what she said, and that is that we are a bit diluted in the system here. And that is because so many things. Number one, we don't have media. We don't have a way to get our voice out. And further to that is, to the extent that we are represented in the media, they say some outrageously false things about what this movement of women and girls is about and what it represents. I mean, the accusation that we are murderous or Nazis or fascists, we are none of those things, and that's so insulting to me. But it also just reveals to me how male, in thinking that perspective is, that is coming at us, because I'm going to quote somebody else in their stand-up comedy line, but basically, women don't shoot you unless you really, 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 really deserved it, right? So like the point is that women we don't go to violence. Ours is a nonviolent movement. We don't want to see anybody that is confused about their biological sex to hurt themselves, hurt other people, disappear from society. We just want our own spaces for women and girls to have privacy while we are changing our clothes and using the bathroom, dealing with our menstrual cycle and our lactating breasts, and everything that our hormone swings in menopause, and every aspect that there is about being a woman, which is being in a woman's body. These are things that just require an element of privacy away from men, and any man that doesn't give that privacy and respect and space to us is simply wrong. And I know that they're wrong, and so that gives me so much confidence to go out and say what I have to say. But I want to also make the point that I've been in activism for a long time, whether it's been party politics or, what I call old school feminism or environmental issues. And I've always just felt like just some small little cog in the wheel, or just, nobody even knows who I am. And yes, I believe in my heart in democracy and in all those principles of one person, one vote, and, my vote matters. And my activism matters, and those phone calls that I'm making to say, go vote for such and such candidate. I, try to convince myself that all of that matters, but it's hard because you just kind of get drowned out. And yet, whereas with this movement that we are in, fighting against the gender industry, and uniting women and promoting radical feminist ideas against pornography, against surrogacy, in favor of mothers raising their own children, and all of the other tenets that people can see at the Women's Declaration. Supporting those interests is an opportunity where you do feel like you're making a difference. Like this protest wouldn't have happened if I hadn't gotten together with my friends and organized it. And we said things, and people passed by, and it gave them pause, and it caused people to stop and think. And right. So in that way, I feel like what I'm doing is so much more meaningful here than it is in any other area of activism.
Thank you so much, KatyJean. It is wonderful to be a boots on the ground activist with you here in the Midwest. I mean, when I see you out on the street and we're on the streets together, we're tight, we bond with one another when we're in person. And when we have those obnoxious males up in our faces, we link arms and we literally are defending one another, and it makes us stronger. So thank you so much.
And it reveals them as being the obnoxious, human beings that they are, just
Yeah.
preventing women from speaking and singing and being friends and exercising our right, our First Amendment right, which is just, you know, we have just as much of a First Amendment right as anybody else. And so here we are, you know, standing in America in public and speaking, because again, they're silencing us on social media, so we have no choice but to go out to the streets.
Okay.
Can I make just one more small, tiny little point, Thistle? And that is when you are, you know, coming out to people kind of for the first time and saying that you are against the gender industry and you know what a woman is and all of that. You'll have to learn the way to approach it, because there are ways to approach it where just somehow how you say it, it just repels people. But then if you learn like just that gentle way to identify yourself and explain yourself, then you get a softer landing. So I just really encourage women, like, just because of the way that you explained it and how it went with that one person or that one group of people, that maybe didn't go so well, but you can still, you know, you don't have to go and hide away from who you are. Just, you know, move on and find other people and work on your approach.
Absolutely. It takes practice. And the more you practice, the better you will get. All right. So let's turn now to Jesika. She is going to answer the question. What are the obstacles, Jesika, that you see in our movement today?
Thank you so much, Thistle. So from my point of view, I will say I believe the biggest obstacles we face are intimidation. And to echo what Amy was talking about earlier, yet again, is distance. So in terms of intimidation, what I've noticed about our opponents here in the United States, and I believe this is true worldwide, is that most of our opponents are paper tigers. I won't deny that there have been a few incidents of violence against TERFs, and yes, I use the word and term and own the term TERF, so I don't think that's a surprise to any of my fellow panelists here, my sister panelists here, or really anybody that might be watching. So there have been some incidents of violence against us TERFs worldwide. What I will say for those incidents is that the women that have been victimized by that violence have not been grievously hurt to the point where it's super serious or life-threatening, or most of the times that they've even needed medical attention, it'll be a scrape or a bruise or something minor. That isn't to say that we shouldn't be afraid of the violence and we shouldn't be standing up very seriously against it. We absolutely should. But I only say that to encourage women to not let threats of violence be what necessarily keeps you home. If you're able to look at it and see that, you know, that's probably not going to be something that's going to hurt you really if you go out and you protest. It's something to make you, to get in your mind, to make you feel threatened and to try to keep you home. So there is no shortcut to courage. You have to just be determined and be resolute and be committed to going out there and stating your truth regardless of what may come. And women will have to decide for themselves. Are they willing to go out and stand up for what they believe in, or will they be scared into staying home? Nobody else can make this decision for us. I've made the decision and will continue to make the decision to show up in the street and present myself publicly and vocally whenever the opportunity arises. And that does something to help normalize and neutralize the stand against us. Okay. You know, the more of us that are willing to come up and show up, and I really can't stress enough how proud I am of the sisters that showed up in South Carolina recently, because that was such a win. Because I've been protesting coast to coast in this country for a year now, and I'm very happy to do it, and I'm very proud to do it if and when I have the time and resources to do so. But thank you so much, Alex, for your work. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because some of us have taken to solving this problem of distance that was mentioned a little earlier by organizing regionally. So for example, I live in Pennsylvania, but I take the Mid-Atlantic region. So I'll drive anywhere, New York City, Philadelphia, down to Washington, D.C. to participate in protests. And if we all take this kind of a regional approach, we make the job a little bit easier. We make it more manageable. So I really want to thank you yet again, Alex, for taking up the stand in the South. That's so vital, so important, and helps fill in what we're doing across the country. So we do have challenges. We do have obstacles. And as you see here, women are standing up and showing up to help fill in those gaps. So thank you.
Thistle, you're muted.
You're muted, Thistle.
Thank you for mentioning Alex and the WLRN Speakers Corner live stream from South Carolina and all the work that she did in her region like that. It's fantastic when women step up like that. Someone who didn't have any experience at all, and she was able to do that and get women there and speak. You can see that on WLRN's YouTube channel, on our Facebook page and our Twitter page. And I'm just going to put in another plug for donating to WLRN to keep us afloat. If you click on the link that you see at the bottom of your screen right now, there is a donate button. And if we can get 5 listeners to donate $5 a month, that will pay for our live streaming costs. And we are running out of time here because this is also going to be a part of our monthly podcast. And our those podcasts we try to keep to under an hour. So I'm going to go to our last question and let each of our speakers talk about conflict in the movement, conflict amongst ourselves, unfortunate circumstances, and disagreements among women, and how those things might actually serve to strengthen our community in some ways. Or when is it that conflict and unfortunate circumstance and disagreement can weaken our movement? So talk about that, and then also just give us your parting words, and we will turn it over to Amy Sousa with that. Go ahead, Amy.
Thanks. Yeah, I think, I mean, honestly, I do, I think that anytime people are trying to come together and work together, whether it's a family, whether it's a job, or whether it is women coming together to fight a mass global indoctrination industry, there is going to be conflict, and I think that first, what we can do is we can honor that all of the women who are involved in this, and men as well, there are a lot of men involved, I should say, all of the men and women who are involved in this are passionate. So that we can at first honor that we do share goals and we share values. So I think that's a nice place to begin. And if we can sort of ground ourselves in that, it sometimes makes the conflicts less spicy, maybe. I think the other thing is, it goes back to community. So there should definitely be a few people in your community that you really trust. I do think it's important to have people that you can vent to and share with and share frustrations with. I think what can be disruptive sometimes is having these grievances publicly. So I do think I've seen, and it's not just the U.S. women who have this. I've seen it with all kinds of women, but I see that there are many strategies, okay, and there are also many people here involved with many different values. So that is okay, and it's okay to even critique someone like, hey, I don't think that is the best strategy for X, Y, and Z reason, or I disagree with you on this value point for X, Y, and Z reason. Where it gets problematic is when it becomes, instead of an argument about values or an argument about strategies, sometimes it becomes an argument between two people and about the people. So I've seen this happen before, and I've seen it happen even with some of our most prominent, speakers on this issue, where all of a sudden you're in a situation where, all of my followers are rushing forward to defend me, and all of, the other person's followers are rushing forward to defend them. And then it's like, these two women with really big follower bases, have all of these women fighting amongst themselves because people get loyal to women that they look up to. And so now, instead of focusing on the broader fight that we all have, which is against a $1 trillion industry, we're fighting amongst ourselves. And I think I don't think there's necessarily a way to avoid this happening. But I do think that what we can do is have awareness that this can happen, and just our awareness around it can sometimes just help dissipate these things from getting too overly inflamed. And I think that the women who are sort of in those more visible, prominent positions, what they can do is be very clear that they are having a strategic disagreement or a value disagreement, rather than saying just like, I don't like this person, because I think that's where we get really wrapped up, because of course we have loyalty. We have deep emotions around, the women that we love. And we're always going to want to, defend and be loyal to them. So it's natural that would be a response. So I think that's my brief answer to that. I know we're running out of time. And I do want to end by sort of echoing something that Jesika said, and which is about courage. And I just want to remind women that while these things are challenging, they are like a practice, like any other kind of a practice. Like if you begin a yoga practice, or if you begin to learn an instrument, or if you, I don't know, take up weightlifting, whatever it is, you practice and build sort of muscles towards doing this over time. I was not as courageous as I am today when I first started doing it, but I have ultimately built up this muscle and worked on it over time. And, I feel a lot more fearless now. And so I'm just saying to other women, that is something you can grow in yourself. It's not like it spontaneously arrives. You practice it and it grows.
Thistle, you're muted again.
Muted.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your inspiring words, Amy. And now we're going to turn to KatyJean. She's going to talk about conflict and disagreements in our movement, and how they sometimes serve us to build our community, and how sometimes that can be destructive. Thank you.
Yeah. My thought about this is, having been entrenched for much of my life in party politics, really what this movement is doing is something that has not happened in the mainstream politics for a long time. And that is that women are working through political aisles. We are uniting Democratic women that have been pro-choice for their whole life with Republican women that have been pro-life their whole life, with independent women that have been, busy with, kids and hobbies and husbands and whatever, to not pay attention to politics really at all. And all of those women are now coming together, working together for uniting for this. So of course we're going to have disagreements, right? Because we don't share the same values. There are deep, like in your heart values that cause you to come to one position or another about things. And so kind of echoing what Amy said, if we take the emphasis away from trying to it's a losing argument to try to change somebody's heart and to try to change the values that they hold. But what we can do is find where we can be aligned. And then just the other thing that I will say is that be prepared for the fact that this movement has crabby women in it, and rude women in it, and stupid women in it, and women who have been hurt by the patriarchy, or by men, or by lots of different things. So we're all here. and want to be able to do some good. So if we focus on the ways in which we can come together, and which we can focus on our united cause, and try to keep the focus on listening to what other people have to say, and then also for ourselves being heard. I think a lot of times it's easy for women where, oh, that didn't go well. And so what I have to say is not important. That's not necessarily for a woman like me with my personality, but I see other women out there where they just are content to not be heard. And I want to really urge those women who maybe haven't always had great success with communication. Keep trying to be heard. Speak the truth, even if it makes your voice shake. And my final thoughts would be just to invite all the women that can to come out to Chicago. We are going to be in Chicago on, oh, I'm using the wrong sleeve here. We're going to be in Chicago on the 10th. And if you want to find us and you're a woman, figure out how to find us, like by communicating with us, and we'll get you on the private group. And whatever, it's not too hard to find. If you know how to find any of the women in this room, we can get you into the group to come to Chicago. So please figure out how to get onto our list and make it out to Chicago. We would love to have you.
Awesome.
On July 10th.
Yep, July 10th, Sunday, next weekend. We're meeting up again to do another Free Speech for Women event. Thank you so much, KatyJean. And Jesika, now we're going to go to you. What are your thoughts on conflict in the movement, and what we can do to either use conflict to help fortify our movement, or, work through it?
So I may give the blandest answer, because I found myself that since I began to take a little bit more of a leadership role within our movement, I've become much more conflict averse. I'm willing to engage in it if I think, if it's absolutely necessary, but more often than not, even when somebody will bring a piece of information to me expecting me to react, I just will decline the opportunity to do so. I think the way we've been talking earlier, and the way Amy mentioned a few moments ago, that, courage is a practice, the way yoga is, the way weightlifting is. I think staying together in this movement is a practice as well. It's like being, in a relationship, and sometimes relationships are hard work, and sometimes you have to learn to let things go. Sometimes you have to think of creative new ways to react and to communicate through a problem. Every day, I and all of us will have to ask ourselves, is this situation I'm faced with worth falling out over, or worth causing other women to fall out with each other over? Is it worth, the way Amy was talking about, okay, we have two competing fandoms. I would never probably would never want women that feel some kind of a sense of loyalty to me to fall out with women that feel some kind of a sense of loyalty to another woman, because at the end of the day, we're just diminishing the power of our movement. So I think what we need to work really hard at is focusing on, is the thing I'm doing right now, is this communication I'm engaging in strengthening our movement? Is it weakening our movement? Is it causing women to fall out? And how can I cause women to come in? Now, that isn't to say that I'm afraid of arguing with women on a thread. I do it all the time. But when we're done with our argument, we're still going to go out and protest together. Okay. That's not going to change because I disagreed with you on this, very minute area of radical feminism, and I'm a separatist and you're not. But you know what I mean? We're still going to go out on Saturday with our bullhorns, and you better have your chants learned, and you better have your little safety vest, and you better bring your whistle too. Okay. So that's really all I have to say about that. Just, continue to focus on staying together and growing our movement. And let's not let these more minor conflicts interfere with that greater goal we have. Let's keep our eyes on the prize.
Wonderful words of wisdom. Thank you all for joining me today for this discussion. This has been a live stream broadcast of WLRN, coming to you from the East Coast, the West Coast, and from the beautiful Midwest. And I just want to thank you, Amy Sousa, KatyJean, and Jesika Gonzalez, and to all of the women out there and men who are listening to this public conversation that we're having about feminist leadership. Thank you. Bye-bye.